Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I'm back for yet another and hopefully the final video to discuss missing magic items and abilities from legendary characters in Total War Warhammer. And our goal is to keep this video short, so let's just get to it. We've already delved into the two most severe cases, in my opinion, which are of course Cetra the Imperishable and Morgar, which links to both those videos will be down below or somewhere or wherever. If you want to check those out, I would really recommend watching those because it comes with some little war bit and stuff, but those are really important. However, there is a set of characters, I think 3, that are still missing a couple of just smaller little bits that I sort of missed as I was sort of cycling through. So here I am again, after having gone through all the army books, to say, this is some things that we need that we don't have. So without further ado, let's just get into it. To start our journey, we'll be returning to the necropolises of ancient Herkara to turn our attention to the ever-faithful exile, Grand Hierophant Katep. While I'm still banging on the drum of Creative Assembly fixing the Confederation situation for everyone's favorite undead DJ, he's actually the only remaining character other than Cetra Morgar who is missing a notable magic item from his tabletop profile. An incredibly awesome item that he has lost during that translation to Total War is his anti-magic device known as the Scroll of the Cursing Word. So the Scroll of the Cursing Word is this ancient papyrus scroll that curses those who utter vile sorceries, filling their mouths with dung beetles or replacing the air in their lungs with scorching sand. The effect of the item is quite nasty. Essentially, it was a once per battle ability that would strike against a wizard who had just cast a spell, and they would have to test against their toughness, which most wizards had a very low toughness, so it was like a 50-50 chance to resist the curse. And if they failed, they not only failed to cast that spell, but they could not cast any spells for the remainder of that entire turn. And if they failed particularly badly, they would also take a pretty significant amount of damage, which was I think the scorching sand is filling your lungs option rather than just beetles in your mouth. Now, a fairly interesting thing for Total War when it comes to translating this item into the game is that Creative Assembly did something a bit funky with Katep and essentially combined the Scroll of the Cursing Word with the Lich Staff, which is the singular item that he actually has in Total War, and they kind of melded them together to give him a somewhat bizarre effect that he doesn't have anything super akin to in tabletop. In Total War, the item that he currently has is the Lich Staff, which is more of an anti-character item that makes it whenever Katep casts a spell that all enemies get slapped with cooldowns, so it disables all their abilities. That to me actually feels like a fairly reasonable interpretation of the Scroll of the Cursing Word if you're taking it from that tabletop version to a Total War, real-time version. In tabletop, the Lich Staff actually improves the casting ability of Katep, allowing him to reroll casting attempts. It has nothing to do with disabling enemy wizards. So in light of all of this, I would heavily recommend for Creative Assembly to add in the Scroll of the Cursing Word as a unique enchanted item for Grand Hierophant Katep that does exactly what the Lich Staff currently does. Then I would take the Lich Staff and I would rework it into an ability that improves Katep's wizarding abilities. So doing something like perhaps making it wherever every time he casts a spell, it adds, a little bit of extra magic into his power reserves, so he's able to cast for longer. Or maybe it's an active ability with a long cooldown, and every time he activates it, it improves his power reserves and improves his power regeneration, so he gets more magic back, as well as generating more magic to use later in the battle, so that could be fine. Just something that makes him a more effective caster. Alternatively, Creative Assembly could just go the easy route and leave the Lich Staff as it is, and just put in the Scroll of the Cursed Word as a unique enchanted item that has some sort of active ability. So maybe it can be something where it's a once per battle active and you can target an enemy caster. So it's one of those abilities that can only target an enemy if they have casting abilities, and it does like a whole bunch of damage to them. So it's kind of like a once per battle stronger spirit leech. That could work fine to kind of represent the whole, like, their mouths full of beetles and their lungs are full of sand and they're just dying there on the battlefield. I think that would be a perfectly fine interpretation. Something along those lines would be great. From there, we go on to two much easier and quicker things to discuss. The first one is good old Kairos Fateweaver, Big Bird himself. So Kairos has a rather unique situation where he's the only character I'm aware of in all of Total War that has a unique active ability in custom battles and multiplayer, which is called the Scroll of Destiny, which is, of course, a reference to Kairos Fateweaver's epithet as
Keeper of the Destiny Scroll.
All I have to say to this is please, 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 Creative Assembly, just add this into campaign. It currently, I have double checked, it is currently impossible to gain the Scroll of Destiny ability in campaign. There's no way for Kairos to get access to it that I could find. Someone do correct me if I'm wrong, but I went in and kind of looked around. I didn't see any way to acquire it. And it is a unique thing. The Scrolls of Destiny are not a common item. They are something that is unique to Kairos. I don't think it needs to be a full-on item, as the Destiny Scroll was not actually something Kairos could acquire in tabletop. His only item, at least for 8th edition, was just the Staff of Tomorrow, which he already has. But the Destiny Scroll, I think, would just make for a really easy item. So I would say maybe just add it to one of his skills on his skill tree. I don't think it needs to be a new skill. I think it would be perfectly fine to go onto his skill tree and maybe look at his like unique abilities and just add it onto one of them. There's plenty of options. He has a very elaborate skill tree, so just putting it maybe at the end of the top unique tree or adding it to somewhere on one of his spell trees, but anywhere there would be totally fine, or he could just start with it on turn 1 in his campaign. But I am personally not a big fan of when there is material that is for some reason exclusive in multiplayer. I think everything in custom battle should be available somehow in campaign, and this is one of those times. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, Kairos is super easy. That takes us to our last character for today, which we're going to be making a quick stop over in Bretonia. The Fey Enchantress. Oh boy, the Fey Enchantress. So one of the iconic aspects of her lore and design is that her gaze, so, you know, she makes eye contact with you, is able to quite literally kill you in just a split second. Just meeting her eyes can cause you to just keel over dead instantly. This was interpreted in the last Bretonian army book that was released, which of course was 6th edition, as her special ability called the Spiteful Glance. This ability was very, very scary because it was so fast. It was faster than Always Strike First. It was faster than impact hits. It was the first thing that would happen in any combat. It did not matter how quick you were, she always got to go first with this ability, and essentially she would just look at everyone in base contact with her, and you would have to make what's called an initiative check, which literally represented how quick the character or the model was at reacting to things. So you would roll an initiative check to basically represent your character looking away before the Fey Enchantress makes eye contact with them. If you failed, you just took a wound that ignored all armor and it ignored ward saves. And ignoring ward saves back in those days was really rare. So this was a mean ability, especially because if she was going up against rank and file units that of course only had a single wound the vast majority of the time, she could basically just scythe down the front rank of enemies. She basically was just like that clip of Sauron swinging his mace and just everyone in front of him just dies and goes flying just from her looking at you. This in Total War Warhammer is not represented in any way, shape, or form. There is no skill talking about it. There is no item. There's nothing representing her spiteful glance. We have everything else pretty much, but this is something that's missing that of course she should have access to. I think the easiest way to handle this, it's not the ideal way, but I think the easiest way would simply to give her another skill on her skill tree. The Fey Enchantress is kind of one of those characters that, and hopefully this would happen on the fabled one day Bretonnian DLC with a rework, but her skill tree is rather congested because she has a lot of skills in place of items. The Girdle of Gold got made into a skill when it really should be an item. Her Toad Power Familiar also on there somewhere. A lot of her things that debatably should be items just got translated into skills. And for the Spiteful Glance, at least for now, until they can maybe do a rework and kind of clean up her skill tree, I would simply just add it as a skill. The Spiteful Glance could be really, really easy. Just make it like a +10 bonus versus infantry that she gains. That just makes her better at fighting. Normally, I would say, oh, maybe make it ability that does damage over time, but she already does that thanks to her Mist of the Lady ability, which does damage over time as she is in combat. So I would just simply make it passive bonus to bonus versus infantry. If they wanted to go super special with it, if they wanted to go hardcore with it, they could give her maybe an active ability that just like shoots out one of the various spells or shooting effects in the game that represents that, because there are many units in the game that have the whole like, if I look at you, you die, with like the Sepulchral Stalkers and the Bloodwrack Medusa and stuff like that. Theirs tend to be more long range, whereas hers is supposed to be very, very close range. So I think just giving her some kind of anti-infantry ability to represent how it kind of functioned well in tabletop would be totally fine. I think that would be a good way to do it. That brings us to the end of this quick and hopefully brief video on the major missing items and abilities that we still need for Total War, though obviously I will kind of probably put this in a playlist with Morgar and Cetra because they should be taken as a set. And these are all things that I'm really hoping that the devs can add in sooner rather than later, because most of them should be very simple, easy additions. It'd be nice to maybe see them kind of tossed in a random patch, or perhaps I like the Tomb King ones. I feel like could come with the End Times patch, because the Tomb Kings are going to be getting, it appears, a fairly decent amount of content. So maybe Kotep and Cetra could get their missing items and such with the Lords of the End Times. I think that would be reasonable. I think Morgar could get his then too. That would be fine. But like Kairos, which should be the easiest addition because it should just be turning it on in campaign mode, should hopefully be really simple. And then the same thing with the Fey Enchantress. She just needs like a little skill that gives her some stat buffs. But anyway, I will be back very soon with a much longer video that I'm going to be very grumbly in, I suspect, where we're going to be talking about mounts and the missing mounts from the game, because oh boy, are there a lot of them, and some of them are already in the game and just aren't where they should be for some reason. So we will cross that bridge when we get to it in the near future. Until then, take care. See you guys around.